It's Friday, August 26th. How many Sharpies are even left at DOJ headquarters? We start here. A judge told the Justice Department to release its reasoning for raiding Mar-a-Lago. Well, now he wants it released by today.
This includes information that they don't want the president's team to see.
Our team is getting ready to read between the redacted lines, so what will they be looking for? New abortion bans have been enacted in several states.
Somebody doesn't need to be at death's door to justify intervention, including performing an abortion.
But a ruling out of Idaho could affect what doctors are allowed to do. And if you got a dozen years left on your gas-powered car, well, that could be the last one you ever own.
This is a big, game-changing decision that's going to move markets nationally and internationally.
California's going 0 to 60 on electric vehicles and trying to change car culture forever. From ABC News, this is Start Here. I'm Brad Milkey. I feel like I would enjoy being a judge, because when you're a judge, you can often go as slow or as quickly as you want. Last week, in the wake of the FBI search at Mar-a-Lago, media outlets asked a judge to force the DOJ to release the groundwork for its raid, the affidavit that justified the FBI in the first place. DOJ came back and said, that's a really bad idea. There are secrets in this document that need to stay secret. So the judge told the DOJ, fine, cross out stuff that you think is really, really harmful, redact it, and send that redacted version that the public can see as of next Thursday. That was yesterday. The document did come in, but again, judge sets his own schedule. No one knows what he's going to say. Is this usable? Does he want more? When would this big important document even be released? Well, yesterday, within hours of receiving this redacted affidavit, the judge announces it will indeed be released, and it's supposed to drop today, perhaps any minute now. ABC's Alex Mallon covers the Justice Department. Alex, it feels like an album release day. What is about to be in this document?
I think we're about to see the Black Album here, Brad. We're about to see a lot of blacked out lines. I mean, the Justice Department made clear in court last week that the redactions necessary for this to not compromise their ongoing criminal national security investigation would be so extensive as to render, in their belief, the document meaningless.
You can redact names, but if you say X was in Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday at 5 p.m., that simply allows everyone just to go back to the video and see who it was.
So they essentially said that their position was that even the redacted version would not serve the public interest in being released. So they have until noon to either release this or potentially appeal based on their previous position that this shouldn't be out there. There's no service to that. If it is released, we know that the judge accepted their version, which he says projects things like witnesses, the essential roadmap of their investigation. He says this affidavit outlines the investigation strategy, what was the search of Mar-a-Lago they sought to accomplish. We know that they identified 3 separate federal crimes that they had probable cause to believe evidence existed of on the Mar-a-Lago estate. And that we know from the property receipt that was released previously that they obtained classified documents ranging up to some of the nation's highest protected secrets.
More than 300 classified documents have been retrieved from Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence, including documents from the CIA, National Security Agency, and FBI on a variety of topics of national security interest.
So again, I think that what we will probably see today is going to be devoid of, what all of us as journalists want to see. This media coalition has been fighting relentlessly to try and disclose some of this to mark a moment in history, the search of a former president's home. I think that probably what DOJ sought to do was to split the baby here, basically say, there is a public version of this document that could be released that includes maybe headers, maybe certain sentences, some names not redacted. But a lot of the information that was in this concerned things like locations inside Mar-a-Lago. The judge previously noted, he said that there was Secret Service interests here that could be compromised. So the granular details that all of us as journalists want to see, unfortunately, I think are going to be black lines.
But so, Alex, as you mentioned, the DOJ didn't have to even admit that this search took place. They didn't have to say anything originally. It was them who came forward and said, hey, public, so you know, this is what we did in regard to the former president. So they want to give the appearance of transparency at least. What do they want to be out there? You've mentioned what they don't want to be out there. What do they want to be out there?
I don't think they want anything else out there at this juncture in the investigation past what they have already released. We know that Attorney General Merrick Garland made that rare public appearance in that press conference.
The Justice Department has filed a motion in the Southern District of Florida to unseal a search warrant and property receipt relating to a court-approved search that the FBI conducted earlier this week.
But that was amid attacks that were coming from former President Trump against the FBI and immediately following an attack on an FBI field office carried out by one of former President Trump's supporters. The temperature in the nation at that time was so high. And basically, I think that Attorney General Garland wanted to come out and say, we know that President Trump has in his possession these materials that we are willing to make public. He can make them public. And we actually know that the former president's team did end up making those public before they could hit the court docket. But what they did not hand over is this affidavit. This includes information that they don't want the president's team to see or his legal team.
There are witnesses who could be harmed or put in danger, who could change their testimony. There are documents or other evidence that could potentially be destroyed or made concealed.
So that is what I think they are so concerned about, that this really is, in their words, the roadmap of their investigation. And whether it results in criminal charges, we do not know. But what the Justice Department does not want out there is anything that can give off hints or compromise the safety of people that have helped them.
Especially this idea that you could kind of broadcast particulars of this if you're on the president's team. We've seen kind of a willingness to do that already. Hey, speaking of documents and presidents and the feds, we saw two people arrested yesterday, Alex, accused of stealing the diary of President Biden's daughter, Ashley Biden. How big of a deal is a stolen diary that people are getting arrested over this?
Well, clearly the Justice Department sees this as a very big deal. You're right. These two Florida residents, Amy Harris and Robert Kurlander, pleaded guilty yesterday to stealing and crossing state lines with items that they were not supposed to have in their possession. And this item was the diary and other materials of Ashley Biden, President Joe Biden's daughter. Now, this dates back to the 2020 election, before the 2020 election, when this woman, Amy Harris, was staying at a Florida home that previously was occupied by Ashley Biden. She found these materials, she admitted in her plea yesterday, and basically reached out to her friend, Robert Kurlander, who connected her with the right-wing organization Project Veritas.
I'm James O'Keefe with Project Veritas.
Oh, my God.
And you are on hidden camera talking about Elon Musk.
That's that group that engages in sting operations against Democrats and sometimes media organizations. And basically, they tried to arrange a sale of the diary to Project Veritas. Now, we have to note that Project Veritas actually didn't end up reporting on this diary prior to the 2020 election. But this plea was especially damning because one of the things that this couple admitted to was that after they had gotten in contact with Project Veritas, a representative that they do not name in these plea documents basically told them to go back to the house and take more materials that they would then offer more money to. That is separate from anything that would be considered acceptable in a journalistic sense.
Right. Journalists can often show what they've gotten from other people. They're not allowed to ask those people to go steal things for them, like what's being alleged here.
Yeah, and Project Veritas, which has been the subject of this federal investigation that dates back to 2020, has maintained that they engaged only in First Amendment protected activities. Now, this plea makes clear that the Justice Department does not believe that. And I should note, Brad, that one of these defendants, Robert Kurlander, has agreed to cooperate with the Justice Department's still ongoing investigation into Project Veritas.
Yeah, fascinating to think that you got this federal investigation going on of this news group that bills themselves as a watchdog, though they often very selectively edit their claims. Project Veritas said in a statement, their news gathering was ethical and legal, all in compliance with journalistic norms protected by the First Amendment. Alex Mallon, thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Next up on Start Here, states can ban all the abortions they want, but can they tell doctors not to improve someone's health? We're back after the break.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
in Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on.
If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Can I hug you?
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights, the #1 daytime talk show, and #1 in streaming news. ABC News, America's #1 news.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television. ABC News, honored for excellence with 41 Emmy nominations, the most of any news organization anywhere. Thank you for making ABC News America's #1 news. Thank you for making ABC's This Week, Sunday morning's #1 news show versus the competition.
Yesterday, 3 new abortion laws went into effect, all of them nearly full bans. Idaho, Tennessee, and Texas all implemented their so-called trigger laws following the Supreme Court's Dobbs ruling. North Dakota enacts a similar ban this morning. Most of these laws have something in common. They don't necessarily threaten women with jail time for obtaining an abortion. Politicians figured out a while ago that does not play so well. Instead, these laws focus on people who assist women in obtaining these abortions, including doctors.
These evidence-based and compassionate guidelines are now the stuff of felonies. They're now being criminalized.
Which is why so many healthcare professionals, including the one you heard earlier this week, describe being unable to do what they consider medically necessary for their patients. Well, this week, those doctors got a weird glimmer of hope from a federal court in Idaho.
The court says Idaho's ban conflicts with a federal law that requires hospitals to provide what is called stabilizing treatment.
But what does it all mean? Kate Shaw is an ABC News legal analyst. Kate, can you just walk me through this ruling? Because this caught everyone off guard.
Sure, Brad. So it's definitely a big deal, but it was a very narrow win for abortion rights advocates. Basically, this ruling applies to individuals who are in medical crisis and who seek care in emergency rooms. So there's a federal law called EMTALA that applies to doctors in hospitals that receive federal funds, and it basically sets forth some guidelines for the provision of medical care to individuals who show up at emergency rooms. And the Biden administration, in the wake of the Dobbs opinion, issued guidance basically clarifying that EMTALA, the federal law, requires doctors in emergency rooms to provide life-saving care and care necessary to protect the health and well-being of patients that might include providing abortion care to patients where doctors deem that care necessary. So the Idaho total ban has now gone into effect, and the federal government sued the state of Idaho, basically saying Idaho can't enforce a total ban because that ban is inconsistent with this federal law that requires the provision of abortion when women or girls appear in emergency rooms and desperately need abortions because their health requires it.
Today, the Justice Department filed a lawsuit against the state of Idaho. The suit seeks to hold invalid the state's criminal prohibition on providing abortions as applied to women who are suffering medical emergencies.
So this federal judge ruled that this federal law trumps the state prohibition on abortion so that doctors in Idaho can provide abortions to women in medical crisis if doing so is, in the doctor's judgment, necessary for the health or well-being of the women.
Under an abortion ban, my fear is these ethical conversations are going to be the benefits of something for a patient balanced against the risks of something to a doctor.
That could involve things like an incomplete miscarriage, an ectopic pregnancy, placental abruption. The federal law says, well, somebody doesn't need to be at death's door to justify intervention, including performing an abortion. If the doctor believes the abortion is medically necessary, the doctor can perform the abortion.
And just Idaho, or does this go potentially, because it's a federal judge, go beyond that state?
So this ruling applies only to Idaho, and it seems quite likely to me that Idaho will appeal and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals will revisit this ruling. And we should say that actually a federal court in Texas, faced with a very similar lawsuit just this week, reached the opposite conclusion and held that the federal law and the Biden administration guidance doesn't supersede Texas's now essentially total abortion ban.
Our Creator endowed us with the right to life, and yet millions of children lose their right to life every year.
So that opinion, I believe, will likely be appealed by the Biden administration. And so you may well have a situation where there are two appeals court opinions about the interaction of this federal law with these state bans, and the United States Supreme Court is going to have to weigh in on that.
Right. And then more broadly, Kate, the Biden administration clearly is trying to show it's doing what it can to support abortion rights advocates as these bans go into effect across the country. But so many bans, so many states. Is there more the Biden administration can do, or are they essentially running out of options here?
Yes, so many bans in so many states. You know, between the total bans and these 6-week bans, we're looking at something like 15 states, and several other states have bans that have been put on hold that could yet go into effect, and more still to come. You know, the federal government has limited tools here. Of course, Congress could pass a law protecting abortion nationwide, and that would be a very significant change to the legal landscape. But short of that, you know, the Biden administration and the executive branch agencies can absolutely do more to seek to shore up access to abortion. But in states that have these total bans, it's on the margins that the federal government is going to be able to make a difference. The bans themselves are matters of state law. And so litigation under state constitutions is still possible. Dobbs doesn't say anything about what state constitutions do or don't protect. But a lot of this is going to come down, Brad, to the ballot box. So individuals either acting directly, as they did in Kansas this summer, and, you know, very clearly demonstrated that they did not want to see a total ban in even the quite red state of Kansas, and individuals choosing their state representatives. But there's, you know, a limited amount the federal government can do.
Yeah, and in fact, just yesterday, the Michigan Board of Elections officially recommended that they just hold a straight-up referendum on this, putting it, again, to the people of Michigan, whether abortions should be legal there. Kate Shaw, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Brad.
According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the average passenger vehicle in this country puts about 4 tons of carbon into the air every year. When you talk about your carbon footprint, it would be significantly reduced overnight if you traded in your car for an electric. Well, in California at least, we're getting closer and closer to the day when you're not going to have a choice.
This is a historic moment for California, for our partner state, and for the world as we set forth this path towards a zero-emission future.
Yesterday, officials in the nation's most populous state put into effect a rule that will ban the sale of gas cars by 2035. I'm not talking about incentives. I'm not talking about tax credits. I'm saying under this rule, it will be illegal to sell a new gas-powered vehicle. ABC's chief national correspondent Matt Gutman is based in the car capital of the country, Los Angeles. Matt, how significant was this vote yesterday?
Brad, there is no doubt that this is significant. And give you a sense of how significant, when I spoke to Gavin Newsom yesterday, he told me this was the single proudest moment of his career.
I'm really proud of this. Like, if nothing else I ever do, I'm never going to do anything that perhaps has a bigger impact.
He called his kids and said, your dad did something for the environment that could be lasting. And he got emotional. And then the kids asked him what the Roblox account password was. But, you know, that's kids. But in terms of California and the world, California is the 5th biggest economy. Where California goes, typically the rest of the country goes.
This is a big, game-changing decision that's going to move markets nationally and internationally. We're going to radically change the way people drive.
Right off the bat, 17 states are very likely going to follow suit.
Wow.
And after that, likely the rest of the country, because automakers want to produce one kind of technology. They don't want to have multiple platforms. That costs money. So to streamline, everybody's going to start going towards either electric or hydrogen-powered vehicles. That is just the future. The question is, how fast can they get there?
Automakers are going to have to make more electric vehicles. That means more models and different sizes and different price points, so that if you want a small car, if you want a large vehicle, you can get that in an electric vehicle.
And this regulation is huge. It's also massively ambitious. Like, right now there are 18% electric or hydrogen-powered cars on the road. It's got to be double that by 2026. That's less than 4 years. Really hard to do, and got to be zero by 2035. So these are super ambitious, and also there are lots of questions, right? Automakers are saying, hey, Gavin Newsom, we're with you. This is a great idea, but where are we going to resource the resources for this, right? We need rare earth minerals. We need lithium. There are supply chain issues with semiconductors and chips. So there are a lot of issues. Environmentalists say it's not happening fast enough.
There's nothing else that will move the needle on greenhouse gases more than tailpipe emissions. About 41% of emissions in California come out of the tailpipe. But if you include extraction, oil extraction, it's over 50%.
And remember, to power an electric vehicle, something's got to give it the power. You don't just pull it out of the ether when you plug it in from the wall, right? So right now, California burns two-thirds of its energy comes from non-renewables. So there's a lot of work left to be done. However, this is a huge deal.
And from the consumer perspective, how is this about to work? Like, in the next several years, are you allowed to get like a hybrid vehicle? Do you have to give away your used gas vehicle? How far does this go?
The ruling applies to gas-only powered vehicles. So you can buy a hybrid in 2036 or 2040 if you want. I assume that they'll be phased out of the market.
The standard covers new vehicles, which is important. As we get more new electric vehicles on the road, that's going to mean more used electric vehicles eventually available, and most cars in the U.S. are sold used rather than new.
And when I spoke to Newsom yesterday, he said, we're creating massive competition for this, right? And that's part of what the IRA bill that President Biden just put forth is also going to do, create massive financial incentive for companies to start creating this infrastructure.
I imagine back in the day when, the people were arguing, we need more horses and buggies. What is this car thing? How do I charge? Where's the gas station? That's a big state. My horse can go farther. Get them more hay.
And Newsom mentioned that, hey, you think in 1905 there were gas stations at every corner like there are now? No, but people saw that there was financial incentive to start creating this infrastructure.
Every single manufacturers getting into this business. All of them have embraced it. Even Toyota, who was the principal opponent of these efforts 2 years ago, just joined and said we're 100% electric in 2035. So this is where it's going. This is the future.
And he says that he is absolutely confident that competition will hold sway and, the free market will make it possible for charging stations to be as nearly ubiquitous as gas stations are right now.
Hey, and lastly, Matt, because you mentioned this is only California, but since they're so large, they're this huge market share. Is this the beginning of the end for the internal combustion car? Like this huge industry that has helped build America for the last 100 years. Is that type of car done?
Yeah. This is I think the beginning of the end has started to happen years ago. And, a testament to that is how much money and how much profit Elon Musk has been able to make with Tesla. So there's obviously demand. Now, one of the biggest issues is affordability. Right now, a gas-powered vehicle costs 50% less than an electric vehicle. They hope that that is going to change, but that is going to be a major stumbling block.
Even without the order, I think that it would have happened anyway, because that's what's going on around us. And it's just like, by 2035, if you're still driving a car I don't throw it away anyways by that date.
That said, this is definitely the future. The question is, how quickly can it be achieved in what parts of the country? And how quickly will automakers follow?
And it's often portrayed like a cultural issue, like red states and blue states. Culture changes very quickly when costs flip like that. Matt Gutman in LA. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
And one last thing.
I shall call him Mini-Me.
It's always weird when someone says you look like a celebrity, right? Because it never seems to be a particularly attractive celebrity, at least not in my case. But some people truly do have doppelgangers out there. Someone who, despite having no relation, looks exactly like them.
It's like looking in a mirror, only not.
Well, this week, a study came out attempting to explain why that is. Scientists recruited 16 pairs of people who were featured in this photo collection of folks who have no relatives in common but look almost identical.
And the more I look at the pictures and at these people, the more beautiful I think they are.
And after extensive testing, researchers found that most of these links were because key parts of their DNA overlapped. Some of these pairs might have expected their environment had shaped them. After all, some of these pairs grew up in the same cities, so you think maybe there's something in the water. Maybe the climate makes us freckle in the same way or furrow our brow like that. But no, apparently it's the DNA.
Sometimes people think we're the same girl.
Which again, does not mean these people are more closely related than they thought. If you look at DNA like millions of tiny little light switches, these ones are just flipped on and off in the same areas. One scientist described it as there's a limited number of ways to build faces, so eventually the system is going to repeat itself. And if that's true, that means over time, if enough people are born, someone will look exactly like you. In fact, right now, your doppelganger could be out there. And if you find your way into enough photos, perhaps you'd be the celebrity that person's being compared to all the time. One of my favorite details here was this one pair of guys met in Atlanta. One of them happened to show up to perform in the other one's band. They looked identical. No one could quite believe it. Now, 25 years later, they are still great friends that could pass for twins. Start Here is produced by Kelly Therese, Jen Newman, Brenda Salinas Baker, Lewis Millman, Madeline Wood, Vika Aronson, Iru Ekpanobi, and Tara Gimbel. Ariel Chester is our social media producer. Josh Cohan is director of podcast programming. I'm our managing editor. Liz Alessi is the head of ABC Audio. Thanks to Lakia Brown, John Newman, and our intern, Nania McLean. Special thanks this week to Chris Berry, Jim Scholes, and Bonnie McLean. I'm Brad Milkey. See you next week.
Take America's #1 news with you anywhere you go, anytime, free. Download the ABC News app now. Breaking news, exclusives, 24/7. There for you with one touch. The ABC News app. Download it now.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
Here at the White House.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go. We made it.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on. If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis, streaming weeknights.
Amber Rose Isaac was the love of my life.
She went into the hospital, and then I just see Shamani is...
She was as good as dead as soon as she walked into that hospital.
Black women are 4 times more likely to die than their white counterparts with the same symptoms.
I can't let Amber be another statistic. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen to anyone else.
This fight is not over.
We're doing this together, man.